I'll introduce you all at first, though, the names. Kind of like a, up. All right, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and good evening. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Brian Eiler, the Associate Director of Oliver Art Center here in Frankfurt, and we're happy to host the following program, Finding Each Other, Art and Poetry, to honor Mental Health Awareness Week, which is this week, October 4th through October 10th. Our Executive Director, Mercedes Michalowski, is here behind the scenes producing this, and 5 poets will read their poems in relation to a painting by either Lauren Everett Finn, Ron Gianola, or B.C. Eiler. The poets are, in order of appearance, Rob Astor, Jennifer Metzger, Ellen Stone, Teresa Scollin, and Jennifer Sperry Steinorth. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them after the presentation. So here we go. Enjoy. And up first, here to read his poems in reference to the acrylic on board painting Summerwood Lane and by B.C. Eiler, and the acrylic on paper painting Losing Focus by Lauren Everett Finn, is Rob Astor.
Thank you, Brian. So I'll start with the first one. Summerwood Lane, version 3. You almost recognize the green forests of your childhood, that hopeful summer sky, the color of newly unfurled leaves. You misplace yourself among the intricacies, each one of them unique, all those living patterns with their shadows intertwined. The artist, even if he wanted to, could not recreate thee, each proliferating. It's like how once you begin folding into yourself, you keep discovering new passageways you can never turn back from. I mean, have you ever wondered how what's inside you is as complicated as what's beyond? The other day, I sat down to write a small, coherent argument, but a footpath opened up into a forest like this one. I grew lost in its fecundity, in turning distances of sky. Then suddenly, all I saw were microbes, which maybe shouldn't be seen as terribly infectious. For what in this world isn't communicable? I fell into the petri dish. Understand there is no single way of seeing this, forest or virus. It is mostly turbulence, but somewhere deeper in the not contamination, there's a kind of bird song. It is not overwhelming, this singing, maybe not heard exactly. Nonetheless, I find comfort in the subtleties. Losing focus. The teacher tells us the one moon reflects itself wherever there is water to be found. The teacher tells us all moons and waters are embraced in the one moon. Each practitioner is asked to paint a circle of his life, her life. But the green forests of my childhood, that green asylum, the green oasis of my childhood is gone. In fact, the mountain is on fire, orange like the unbreathable skies over California. The structure is on fire. It's made of fire. I mean, how many houses reduced to burning cinders? How many become ash? All the houses burning in California. The teacher reminds us we each live in a house on fire. The green mountain of my childhood is gone. I walk among the burning timbers. I turn the blackened pages. What remains of words, what remnants of words I do find disintegrate between my finger and my thumb. I mean, what did we ever own? To what did we forfeit our lives? The teacher tells us make a circle, but I've made 1,000 already, and all of them, all the circles are on fire.
Thank you, Rob. That was Rob Astor. And next to read her poems, one relating to the acrylic on canvas painting, Too Much Information by Lauren Everett Finn, is Jennifer Metzger.
Too much information. Look up, green strips and billow. There is something in the sky that I don't want. All the unwilling breathers and unmapped echo chambers churn with the unjustified, the underscored, the last of this or that animal. Did I protect the right documents? Did I place them in the right containers? The cold air hurts. The warm air hurts. I want to flatten the tornado, press it between my palms, feel its skin. I must disorient and distract the evening. Eventually the room will leave me, even the digital readout calendar, even the ready battery life challenger. Someone is speaking, let's not listen. The wind breathes ropes, let's not pull them. In the morning, factorials, let's not forget them. A tyrant is dying, let's not mourn him. Wasn't this a blank page once? It's the turn of the century, every century. Even the forgotten ones rise into the data stream with violent dust motes and unkempt corners, locks and symbols, anchors and pillows. There is more than one origin to this. We express our age in ice crystal megalomania, eyes within eyes. The news is what we feed it. It arcs over the horizon and lands in the yard. It's fall now. I feel like coming down. The sun shouldn't be the only thing we all turn away from. I enter breakout rooms to find chromatic clouds. Where did the facts go? They want me to tame them, to swallow them. They want me to see to their demise. Sometimes the weather gets too much credit. If anything, it's a losing game, a might-be chamber of disbelief, an absence of photography, errant code. There's a bad omen in the ripped catalog pages, or maybe it's disdain. The wheel stops emptying its passengers into elocution. The miserable must see to their own housekeeping and understated children. The storm blinks like it's watching me, and yet I come around again to ocean sheen, souls eager, shy. How many buttons must I press to keep everyone alive? The storm reckons with itself. It wants to be a map, but what are maps when memories color the terrain? I struggle with the light. It's ugly by all measures. There will be no hunt, no manifest destiny. There will just be days with words in them, words that are reckless because love is reckless, and words that are careful because love is careful. Treaties will be discussed, presidents named, laundry done. I'm gonna read one more poem, and it's also an acrostic poem after a painting, but this is by a painting by Theodore Jericho. It was painted in 1822, part of a series of portraits of people in insane asylums. There was a theory at the time that mental illness could be diagnosed by facial features, and it was called physiognomy, this practice. But his portraits didn't prove this theory to be true. They ended up showing the suffering of people, and the doctors were disappointed by the results because there was so much compassion in the paintings. It's called Jericho Paints a Portrait of a Woman Suffering from Obsessive Envy. 1. She covets Jericho's colored pigments ground into powdered gems, sly grin. The same muscles are missing in animals, they said. Can you see it in the tuck of her chin and her lack of wings and her red-rimmed lids and her bony cheeks and her spider veins and the way her eyes follow him when he packs up his supplies and leaves? This little night makes a grinding noise. Every time a flower dies, God is divided. 2. The after effect of flesh is where the soul resides, but she's nothing like the finch, they said. To a medical doctor, she might look like a sow, but a sow doesn't know the grass is greener in another field, nor can it sow a seam of urges in a frown line. Is it her missing lip, or her sinking eyebrow, or her hooked nose, or the rivers furrowed in her forehead, or her bonnet torn and flapping like the failure of a white flag to properly unfurl? The after effect of flesh is where the soul resides, but every time a flower dies, the grinding is divided. 3. Is it his charcoal-colored heavens, or the cannibals who washed up on the shore, or the severed human limbs instead of ham hocks? The after effect of flesh is where the soul resides. On this they insist. Or is it the smell of piss in a cramped and umber corner from which her soul emerges, a heavy sack to match her lack of retinas? It's easy to believe that the night doesn't love her, but does she love the night? Does she long for it? Or does she covet hands like haunches, grinding down her skin's translucence, so fragile, like flower petals strewn down the corridors? The doctors wave their heavy hams around while pacing to and fro, and the petals in the shadows make a grinding noise, then die. 4. Jealous flower, thin as a petal in a storm. To be impoverished and wish is to be inefficient. If you want to know want, you can find it in the heaven she conjures, where even God desires fur like animals, and the after effect ripples through her cell walls with a viscous pearl-like facade. 5. This little night, this little grinding expression, this little woman, this man with his colored palette, every time a flower dies, it stains the earth, and the earth feels a little jealous, knowing just a hint of what isn't. Is it the solitude or the doctors who watch over her, or her days sunken like a terrible boat, or the years that whittle fingers like wood, or the nights swallowing the dripping walls in dreams that are uncertain about the grinding noise, or where the soul resides, since it has no significant features, or none she's ever seen, because she has no mirror. She has no longing for a mirror. She doesn't wish to see her face when Jericho leaves. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And that was Jennifer Metzger. And now here to read her poems, one in relationship to the oil on canvas painting, passage number 152 by Ron Gianola, is Ellen Stone.
This poem is after Ron's gorgeous painting, which took me back to rural Pennsylvania. It's called Pears. That September, the clouds and sun took turns opening doors in the sky and slamming them shut, a kind of purple blue that made her wince, as if the bruise would spread and everyone would know what she was going through. Harsh words that don't leave marks, the drudgery of absence over and over. Firmament hanging over her head either way, spangled or barrel heavy. Those days there were ripe pears laden on the tree in the faded orchard, golden fat, with streaks of crimson, so faint they were likely imaginary. She remembers pulling them down, holding them, turning them over and over, a small covenant. There was always the making of something out of what looked like an ending, or was. When winter fruit fell off the tree in late October, and the sky simmered its peculiar soup, marled lake, corn shaft, ground dotted with rusted lumps. What to do but gather up the lot of them, some pocked with cuts or bugs, some mashed on one end, otherwise hard as a bucket of rocks. spinning butter from what is left over. At the stove, skins slip through her fingers. Pear mash declares the air a kind of song. Out the window, the hayfield flickers, light-footed, approaching dusk's easy arms. The next poem is featured in the most recent Dunes Review published by Michigan writers in Traverse City. I love this journal and you should all check it out, as well as join Michigan writers. Dark Clouds is after my friend and colleague Steve Coran's incredible photograph of a storm over Lake Superior. Dark Clouds. 1. When dark clouds were overhead, our mother herded us inside. All the while, gloom gathered in her, stuck there like dirty wool on a sheep, darkening with the days, as if twilight was always lingering, boiling. 2. The lake ripples this morning, rolling sheet on the clothesline. It's calm, temporary. The sky stews, giant felt swath, sweltering until the maelstrom hits, pelting us. Then the world is a muddled jumble. 3. Our father used to thrill when storms blew in. Havoc could be kept outside. He loved the getting ready, battened down the house, brought wood inside. The dark clouds inside our mother never blew over and left until she did. 4. The lake is deep and keeps her secrets. She is the largest mirror we can hold, so we can see the dark clouds, at least until the night comes, at least until we know what deep fog front we'll still be living under. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. That was Ellen Stone. And now to read her poems, one in relativity to the gouache on paper painting, Apartment with Fireplace by B.C. Eiler. Here is Teresa Scollin. Teresa?
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So I was really struck by the movement in this painting, and it got me thinking about the molecular nature of heat. So Apartment with Fireplace. At 3 in the morning, the fireplace is cold. All matter is made of molecules and atoms which are always in motion, translation, rotation, vibration. Motion creates heat. At 3 in the morning, my continuous translation of what is, what was, what could be, is at fever pitch. I can't sleep. Roll out the yoga mat to direct this motion into attention, intention. I can tell you the notion of an indoor fireplace came with invasion, William the Conqueror. That was a bloody time, but we got fireplaces and a grand language out of it. Conduction is the movement of heat by direct contact, French with Anglo-Saxon, with the priest's Latin. We can say things in English no one else can say, so why don't we? The heat spreads, fires, murders, and lies. The heat radiates, travels through empty space to reach me, and I feel it. The fireplace says, we think we can regulate fire, domesticate the perilous, the bloody and indecent maw of history. Here we are, living with danger in the house. It said when large numbers of molecular bonds act in unison, they can make a strong contributory effect, change the ambient, the vibe. I am just one, awake and alone in the wee hours. All I have is science. I'm counting on the strength of the average bond. So thinking about the theme of this reading, and sort of addressing or dealing with turbulent times, I found myself really focusing on small domestic acts as a way to just focus my attention. So this is making the bed. The first act, the first ritual in the religion of doing, the first chore you learn, standing by the bed while your mom shows you how a life is made in layers. Underneath must be firm to support you, then sheets to wrap the body in cool, blankets to warm, pillows to hold your weary head, and over all of it lies the comforter. Corners and edges must be tucked in, wide expanses of the bed spread without a wrinkle. Savannah of the house, that plain, promising rest, shade, a little stream of fresh water, beside which. Each morning you raise up your arms in the body's prayer to air the sheets. Smoothing sleep's terrestrial rumple, you turn away from the wilds of dreams. You make preparation for return to night, the climbing in and letting yourself fall into sleep. The first certainty, a day is a life is a day. When time comes, you will lie down again in what you yourself have made. And then this last poem is also ekphrastic. It's in response to a photo of a slide used in biology classes of cell division. This is mitosis. Arrested mid-split, sliced and stained, laid between layers of glass, the purpled spindles reach around the chromosomes and pull. This is how it must be. The matched homologous pairs, which once were one, now bent over double as they are wrenched apart. Strange, the silence of anguish under glass. Like stained windows in a church, bloodied saints calling, reaching out their palms. How we keep becoming, chromatin gathered into thread, mitos from the ancient Greeks who were always weaving, weren't they, things that come apart. The separated pairs are dragged to the far ends and held there like fighters, like lovers torn, while the cell walls close, making two from one. It gets confusing. What is one? What is the other? Like, I had a father once. When he left his body, we were still holding him with our fingers, these spindles. Or everything inside, all the unseen silent tearings. Sometimes I feel the pull in my throat. Look, I was cut here on my palm. Now it is healed. Think what it took. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. That was Teresa Scollin. And finally, here to read her poetry involving work from her installation, Kiss Me, We're Dying, which is currently on exhibit here at Oliver Art Center, is Jennifer Sperry Steinorth.
Hello. If you'll give me just a second, I'm gonna share my screen with you. It's really a pleasure to be reading with these fine poets and this beautiful art that they have shared and given voice to. And thank you, Ellen, for doing so much to make this happen, and to Brian. All right, so this work was begun 2 years ago this October. It is work that is assemblages or poetry, visual art collage. And I'm going to read a statement that I wrote 2 years ago, and I could not possibly have anticipated how prescient this work would be now, where we are all walking around with masks and needing to wear masks in everyday operations in order to protect one another. But I'll read you this statement that I wrote 2 years ago, and then I'm going to try to show some slides while I read, and then I'm going to read a couple of poems while I show some very amateur film that I just shot today. So it's all very weirdly technical and experimental, and I hope you'll forgive me if it's a little wobbly. Okay, does this move? Yes, okay. Dear Earth, I am thinking of intimacy, frailty, and aversion. Sorry, I'm gonna fix this. Okay. I am thinking of intimacy, frailty, and aversion. Vulnerabilities in the body from which we turn away. I am thinking of breaches, breaches that harm, breaches that heal. A whistleblower breaches trust to stop a greater injustice. A locked door breached may free a person trapped inside. Recently, my father underwent emergency bypass surgery. Is a kiss a breach? Failing to, what disease festers? To employ surgical masks as pages came to me while considering the paradox of breaches, violent acts whose intent is to save life. Disposable masks are donned to protect, yet also strip the wearer of individuality, obscuring the part of the body by which we most readily identify one another. The mouth eclipsed in this way is indicative of an imbalance of power, or of vulnerability, or of poison. Meanwhile, October, the trees change color, drop their skirts. Falling leaves are an outward sign of an internal shift. The tree prepares for sleep, for a time when it can no longer prepare food. Where I live, people flock to collect the prettiest leaves, press them between those of a book. Unlike the autumn foliage, we often avoid others when they show signs of frailty. I have been guilty of this. At an artist residency this fall in 2018, I noticed how frequently people congregated according to age. Our aversion to frailty, vulnerability, aging, dying can lead prematurely to perhaps the greatest loss, that of intimacy. While the outsides of my masks thickened with scabs of glue and gauze and leaves in various stages of decomposition, I wanted the interiors to hold something intimate but similarly fragmented. I discovered a stack of discarded books. Tearing leaves from those texts, I excised fragments that felt evocative, that would reward the viewer who leaned in for a closer look. It is my hope that the space created by the masks invites the viewer to lean in, to consider their own relationship to frailty, aging, and mortality, to become gentler with themselves, to foster greater intimacy with others, and dear Earth, with you. Okay, so this is a little film. Forgive my little technical adjustments here, please. Sorry, this is more tedious than I intended. All right. She was afraid of rooms with doors and windows. Perhaps she was alone, or it was windows and doors turning out the lights behind her, each one for the first time. They show a widow the car. What it looks like, the vastness. Surely this is the once, or in love trying. So enormous the other, to lift the sea would swim beneath. She rose and rose, shoulders and breasts and legs, dark hide of the beast, the backs of her thighs and then her calves higher. Then it plunged downward, leaving. Another came, and again, the most exhilarating she had: water, sunlight, speed, whales. She awoke in, you can almost in the face, what we do, the way we register in the bones, shape the subway, what went before. Its cavity, ribs that make up its swelling, thinner than the belly of the sound hole or the rose. She was very tired in that place. A few could not stand, could not be closed, and they watered the pillows. And there's one more here that I will read. At the door, sleep in her palms and up her thighs the chair. She recalled her good legs and nice skin, depended on never thinking. Men faced the walls of the temple. Sex is a little death, what makes new again. Drunk and rude, or grazing their horses with idle and wanton spirit. It made our fine house smoke and spit. If only I had been, indeed, if only, to play the child, because somebody has always wanted them, bells like this. Now here beside him in the rafters of a hayloft he had seen. The twirls you once had, you were 8, or certain beds, and what went on, and how we prisoners repeat, re-experience exercise after exercise, then abruptly shift. By this play is known if you are aching. Sugar and pan and cup one another in the darkness. Perplexity about where to put it. Much trouble, his illness, of his wish, need, of her trouble was too much. Am I not fallen away? Do I not dwindle? An old lady's loose gown, an old apple. I am in, and then I, forgotten, am a peppercorn, a church. So much trouble already, much trouble. She could find in the dark the milk and her hand opening the walls of the temple. D'amour, d'amour, the well, that these deep, with no bell at all, and something taken care of, to walk and talk and have opinions of her that didn't sleep, and water, her whole body bright, and once. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was Jennifer Sperry Steinnorth. And we hope you've enjoyed this presentation of Finding Each Other, Art and Poetry in honor of Mental Health Awareness Week, which again is this week. And if you'd like to learn more about any of these poets or artists and how to get their books or art, please go to our website, www.oliverartcenterfrankfurt.org, and click the events tab. There we'll have links to their websites and written works, and in a few days, a link to a recording of tonight's presentation. And now to answer any questions. From the audience or the poets or the artists or. Oh, you're welcome.
There's some great comments in the chat, so make sure you guys are reading those also. We were also getting some great comments on Facebook as well.
Oh, I see a lot of thank yous coming through. So when I say you're welcome, I'm saying it to everybody who's replying.
So Carol Graylick wants to know what the preparation and timeline was for this evening. Ellen, do you want to?
Sure, I can I can answer that question. At the end of July, my mom broke her hip and I was sitting in the hospital with her feeling despair about writing and about creative work and feeling like I might never kind of do it again. I was sort of sunk into caretaking, and I just sent an email out to the Oliver Art Center and a bunch of other places saying, hey, Mental Health Awareness Week is going to be in October, and I know a bunch of poets who would love to write about what's going on in our world and, in art, and why don't we do something? And Mercedes and Brian said, sure, which is kind of amazing. So then we just kind of collaborated, and I found the poets because a bunch of them are my friends and Michigan writers folks, and Brian found the artwork, and it was actually remarkably easy to put together because everyone said yes that I invited. And then we just got to write poems to artwork, which is, who doesn't want to do that? This artwork was amazing. So it made all of us feel, I think, wanted and hopeful. And like we had something to do in the midst of this pandemic. And then we get to hear these incredible poems. And then, of course, Jen Sperry Steinnorth, in the midst of all this, has this pop-up art opening that fits perfectly into what we're doing. And I don't know.
I want to just say, we submitted this artwork a year ago. Like, we submitted this idea for a show before COVID and were accepted. So it wasn't even, it's being billed as a pop-up, but we submitted it in the like normal, like submit your proposal ideas, and which was also weird.
That is so weird. And also, Brian after I sent this proposal out, he said, sure. And he picked 9 pieces of art and sent the art out to all of us. And then we got to pick the art that spoke to us. So Brian really, I think, embodied the idea of artwork that could connect us to the theme, some of which is art.
Yeah.
And the art was so different. Like when you look at the art pieces, they're remarkably different from each other.
Well, thanks. I'm glad you like them. I've been wondering if the opposite could ever happen, like the opposite of ekphrastic, where an artist would read a poem
Oh, sure.
and paint a painting
I would
about the poem.
love to do that.
Well, we have next month open, so jump at that.
I saw a couple of questions from Carol about, approaching, how do you approach that kind of project? And maybe each one of us would have a different answer.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
I think sometimes having the constraint, this was a double constraint, actually a triple constraint. There was a time deadline. There was, the painting, and then there was sort of speaking to these times and or mental health. So, that when you first commit to that, that feels a little uncomfortable. So I've spent some time feeling uncomfortable. I don't know about the rest of you. But, the painting, I did respond to a painting that just made me feel something. And then I just kind of walk around with that for a few days. And then I started thinking about the nature of heat. And then I started looking at scientific descriptions of heat. So I was kind of sort of priming the pump with language a little bit. And then I really am starting to wake up at 3 a.m. and to do yoga because I'm anxious, anxious in a way I've never been anxious before. So, so all those things sort of come together in a perfect storm. And I feel lucky that I got a poem out of it, quite frankly. And so sometimes there's no telling what kind of combination of things will result in a poem. I'm sure others would have other stories.
Looked like there was another question. Thank you, Teresa. Did you see that one, Mercedes, from Linda? Oh, she's got it. And yes, Jennifer's exhibit that was had the cool film up is here through the end of the month. And Linda, so yeah, please come down and see it. We're open every day but Sundays lately.
I want to just answer this question about what in a painting starts to trigger your response in words. And I find a painting such a relief because it is, to me, a painting always takes me to a place or a feeling. And then you have your setting, you have what you're going to write about. So the painting to me was like, oh, thank you. Like I know where I am now. And then I could write a poem based on a story or a feeling, and then you approaching it from a health perspective, maybe a struggle. But the painting I chose, it was incredible because I had a resolution. There was like purple blue, and then there was gold and crimson, and it just led to hope in a way, or like an answer. So the painting was such a relief for me. It was a way to have a mission with an end.
Well, thanks, Ellen. And hi, Linda. I saw the hello. Any questions for each other or us at the Art Center? Or?
I'm just trying to, go ahead, Ellen.
I want to hear from Jennifer and Rob about writing from the paintings.
Yeah, that's what I was just actually trying to reactivate. I'm using my cell phone right now and having a little bit of difficulty turning myself back on.
There you are.
Yeah, I found myself finally. So when Ellen provided and Brian provided each of those paintings, I just opened all of them up and went through them. And had an immediate response from each of them. I knew what that response was. I knew right away what each of those poems made me feel like. So I knew right away which paintings of the ones that I looked at were the ones that I was going to write about. Summerwood Lane did sort of give me this feeling of literally what the title was. I mean, it made me feel like I was back in the woods of my childhood, and so and I just started working on that one. There was a couple other ones that I liked too. There was the one the second one that I ended up writing about losing focus. I liked because it had an aspect of it had a different kind of green, and it sort of reminded me of a forest as well. And so I suddenly saw how those two sort of spoke to each other. So I got sort of interested in that. And so I sat with both of them and just sat down and wrote did some immediate writing for about 15 minutes or half an hour with each of them. Put them away. A couple of days later, I took them out and did the same thing. Started just writing, and did that a couple more times. And then the more I did it, things I sort of focused on what I wanted to talk about, and that's how it worked for me.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
Jennifer Metzger, you have to talk.
Okay. So the painting I chose, it immediately because this is I felt like too much information was something I was dealing with, both in going through periods of intense depression, but also going through the pandemic. So I felt like there was a confluence of sort of like the insanity of my own experiences and the insanity of the world were sort of coming together, and I could sort of see that in this painting. And I really, one thing I really appreciated about the painting was that the too much information that was being shared was indecipherable, was something that I couldn't actually make sense of. And I felt like I was just trying to make sense of what I was seeing, the way I was trying to make sense of the world. And to be honest, and Ellen knows this because I shared multiple drafts with her, this painting this poem could have probably gone on forever because it felt like too much information was just really too much information was also the way I felt about writing it. There was more information than I just needed to keep getting it out and getting it out. And it might keep going. It might actually spur a much longer piece. So that was my experience.
Thanks, Jennifer. It's going to be hard to look at artwork in the coming weeks and days without having any poetry to back it up.
I want to hear from Jen Sperry Steinroth too, because she seems to have had this sort of, I don't know, mythic sense of what we were about to deal with, even though we weren't there yet.
Oop, she's muted.
Oops, there we go. Sorry. Yeah, it's
Sorry.
funny. I was out there today and I met a girlfriend out there at Oliver and was photographing, and she was seeing the work for the first time, although she'd seen photos. And I was thinking about that because people have said like, oh, are you psychic? You know, whatever, something's like this. And I was thinking like, but this is the thing we do as artists, is we're sensitive and we like, you know, respond to things with sensitivity. And I kept just trying to solve problems. Like the thing grew, I didn't know what I was doing. I just, similar to the rest of you with constraints, I had a topic that I was focused on, and like I ended up scrapping pieces of paper to put inside the masks because the masks themselves resist ink, because I was going to make a book out of the masks and use the masks as paper. And so every little thing was just like, oh, here's a problem. How do I fix this problem? And then the bigger problem was like, here are relationships that are breaking down, and here is this kind of violence is to save people, and this kind of violence is harms people, and how do we tell the difference? And you know, so yeah, those are some of the things that were going on. But yeah, how's that for a trail off into a like ...
Brian, here's a question I have, because one of the people asked about, can the paintings and the poems be on display as a collection? It sounds like some of the paintings are owned by people. So the Oliver doesn't own all these paintings. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm not sure I guess where all of them are. I could try to find out. I know all the artists and would like to see, you know, copies of the poetry if you could provide them. But I really don't know where they all are, truthfully. I could try to track them all down.
I mean, I just think it would be cool to have the poems and the paintings together at some point. Like just like Jen Sperry Steiner's stuff is all together in one little room. It'd be nice if this could be together. I don't know if it's possible, but it's certainly a thought.
Well, I could start looking into it.
Okay, cool.
I was going to say, Ron Gianola just said his painting is available.
Cool.
And I have Lauren Finn's painting. So that essentially leaves you, Brian.
Yeah. I just love the idea of the words and the visuals being in the same place at the same time.
Well, and this could be something that is kind of ever evolving, because if we want to, you know, kind of attempt this kind of a poetry read again, we could kind of keep the same components to it. And, you know, there's always the pop-up exhibitions. There's always, you know, main gallery exhibitions. So there's, you know, there's always possibilities. I think that, you know, this is something that, I mean, we had, what, at the peak, we had 28 people attending, and that's probably about the same or more than what we would have in person. And with the way, you know, everything is right now, this, you know, this could be the start of a beautiful, you know, collaboration.
I just really want to thank you guys for being willing to do this, because, you know, out of the blue, you could have said no. And you said yes. So thank you for being willing to do this. And also thank you to all these incredible poets who said, sure, like, I'll do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was our pleasure having you guys.
You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for all the work.
Thank you, Mercedes and Brian. And
thank you to all of you for making that happen. It was really a pleasure to sort of focus on something and make something, and also read in company of others. And thank you to all of you who came. We can't really see you, so it feels a little bit like speaking into the darkness, but I'm glad you're here.
And participating as a, you know, that was a fun and easy part. The organizing and that bringing everybody together that's where all the work is done. So
I
thanks
really
for,
wanna
Oh,
thank artists too. Like, I feel like we should have them with us because they were an integral part of this. Like, the
yeah, I
art
think,
got me going.
yeah, next time I think we'll get them on here.
Well,
Um,
they were in the attendees.
Well, thank you to them because their work just really helped us do this. We couldn't have done it.
there was a thing I participated in a couple of years ago. I think Anne Marie also participated in it. They had several of this artwork at galleries, and we were asked just to go into the gallery and basically do this, sit down in the gallery and sort of just write an immediate response to the artwork. So in terms of what might be an interesting thing to do in a gallery would be to sort of present have the artwork in display and have some poets come in and just respond. And then,
Thank
Yeah.
you, everybody. Yay!
right, thanks.
Oh, sure.
Great.
I've got one more paragraph in my script.
Okay.
Starts with, okay, that's a wrap. Thank you. And thank you to our artists, Lauren Everett Finn, Ron Gianola, and even to BC Eiler. And thank you to the poets, Rob Astor, Jennifer Metzger, Ellen Stone, Teresa Scollin, and Jennifer Sperry Steinnorth. And thank you for watching and good night.
All right, thank you. Good night.